Distant Networking, and I'm Sadie. And today, my guest for a conversation is Ayako Monsell. Introduce yourself, Ayako.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Ayako. I'm currently living in Las Vegas right now. I know Sadie from Atlanta. I spent about 20 years out there doing a lot of different things. I spent 10 years of that at CDC. So background in public health and data and big data and statistics and all of those other kind of good things. Now I am, like I said, living in Las Vegas. I've been in the cannabis industry here for the past few years. I watched it go from a medical market to a recreational market. And I had the opportunity to really use the history that I have in research to be able to apply it to a very kind of still emerging market, figuring out how to, not only counsel patients, but now counsel businesses, counsel, people who want to create products. CBD and hemp is everywhere now. Those are really, really kind of big words these days, letters and things. And so there's a lot of options in creating products and being a part of a product line. I'm sure somebody at some point in time has tried to sell you CBD. And it can be hard to kind of figure out where to go from them just saying, hey, this works, to actually finding something that works for you. So just here to help navigate the weird wide world and wonderful goddess cannabis and marijuana.
Awesome. So when you were doing data and working with the CDC and stuff, what realm were you in?
So like I said, I was there for 10 years, so I had a few different contracts. I started in environmental health on projects like the National Exposure Report. National Exposure Report is the report that eventually got lead out of things like gasoline and paint and things like that. I was doing a lot of data display and statistical programming rework for certain things. That was also at the point that I was doing cholesterol standardization. So standardization of the lab equipment that tests for cholesterol information to make sure that if you get a test result, not only like in California, you'd get a same test result in New York, but it was a worldwide, so around the entire world. And I would really love to apply that into cannabis at some point in time. So figuring out how to work those two worlds together. From environmental health, I wound up back at CDC during the H1N1 pandemic. So I was in the vaccine department. I was doing analysis as well as launching their interactive mapping on their website. So I was able to do that. I was doing PR at the time for H1N1 a little bit, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then from there, I wound up opening up data.cdc.gov, which is CDC's open data portal. So collecting the public information from CDC and making sure people can access it through API and use it in, apps or websites or other things like that. We were also doing, like, I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was where like CDC offers standard content and then you can just lift it and put it straight into your website. And so whenever that content changes at the CDC level, it automatically changes in your website. So that the people working in the lower levels of public health and stuff like that, they didn't have to worry about maintaining or having somebody maintain that information to make sure that it was up to date. And I think a lot of that came from, the post 9/11 era, the post, H1N1, immediate information, making sure that it's out there as quickly as possible.
Wow. So everything that's happening now is like vaguely familiar to you.
Yes and no, right? Because this has never happened ever, right? It's definitely never happened in our lifetime. I doubt it's going to happen in other lifetimes to come.
Right.
But this this is literally worldwide. Um, these other aspects of things, yeah, H1N1 was worldwide too, but a lot of people seem very far removed from it, right? Like not you didn't necessarily know a lot of people who were affected or, who had really severe conditions from it. You might have, but it's not like this, right? It's not where everybody's seeing it. But also the way social media was back then, it wasn't what it is now either, right?
Right.
So it's about getting information out, but it's about getting good information out.
Yeah. So how did you get involved in consulting in the hemp and cannabis world?
Well, so before I even started in the cannabis industry, I actually figured out really more about what cannabis is just by being a medical patient here.
Mhm.
I had a severe allergic reaction. I wound up not walking for about a week, and figuring out how to treat myself after that, and not necessarily treating myself with pharmaceuticals or anything else like that, but figuring out how to do that, I wound up getting a medical marijuana card and kind of doing what I had done in my mind casually before medically, right? And so I was able, because of the testing information here in Nevada, you get to learn more about your plant. You have terpenes, not besides, your basic THC, CBD breakdowns. And that really changes the way the plant affects you and how you interact with it. Um, so when I smoked the exact same strain from the exact same grower, but noticed that the production dates were different and the test results, right? If you're talking about, standardized testing and everything else like that, those test results were different too. And so obviously I wasn't expecting them to be the same, but when you realize that the plant can change with the exact same strain, with the exact same grower, right? From every grow to every grow, the background that I have in statistics and data made it really easy for me to understand and say, oh, that makes sense. I don't feel the same way I did smoking this one when I smoked that one because these test results are different and are giving me different effects. It made perfect sense in my mind. I totally changed the way that I started to purchase and consume cannabis. I would, like, in the sense of things, I would have been what you would call a sativa diva because I would consume all day long. But when I was buying sativa strains and getting tired and or sleepy during the day, it you learn that it has nothing to do with sativa or indica. Like, that doesn't have to do anything with the effects anymore. It purely has to do with how the plant is grown, whether it's short and fat or tall and skinny. The actual genetics of the plant. So it changes the way that you interact with cannabis. And so I wouldn't have been interested in it, I don't think, if I would have been in another state that didn't have and those kinds of things. So I'm grateful that when I did step into the medical cannabis, the cannabis entity, just as a patient, I was able to be somewhere that I could really start to drive the way that I wanted to feel because I was a regular consumer. So I knew somebody who was working with a doctor's office here in Nevada. I kept telling them that I could help them do things with their office. I wound up creating all of their advertising. I wound up creating all of their e-commerce. I wound up creating, doing the things that in my mind I naturally do. I solve problems. So I solved a lot of problems there, and then I started to go on and solve other people's problems. There, I got to leverage that being a doctor's office to learning more about the science. Um, so again, with the background I have, it was really simple for me to read through abstracts and understand basic interpretation of things, and then be able to apply that to a conversation with a patient. I'm still doing what I can to make sure it's at an attainable level for everybody, but I think that's just going to keep coming with the more conversations I have with different people, because even the concept of endocannabinoid and the endocannabinoid system that word in and of itself, just because of the length, right? It can be scary, right? And it's something
Yeah.
that people aren't accustomed to or aren't used to. And so it's just figuring out how to break down that kind of information, and not necessarily to have them have that stigma of THC and being high and all of these other things that, depending on where you live, are either completely accessible or completely inaccessible, or like, you are completely looked down upon, even if you venture to talk about it. I mean, we could talk about the concept of how many conversations did we really have in the state of Georgia about cannabis
Yeah.
that weren't with our friends in private locations, in a hush hush type of tone.
Mm-hmm.
It changes. When I get to say the word all the time, it's freeing.
Right. Well, and here, in Georgia, the laws are so screwy in that, like, you can have a medical, but you can't, like, there's only 6 growers allowed, and there's still no actual, like,
Yeah, so the
retail
state of
for
Georgia
it.
is
It's so screwy.
yeah, difference. That's what I'm saying. So that's what I mean about the differences between state to state, right? Because it is a state to state process. Every state puts different things into place at the government level, right? And so the government level and standards for Nevada are multiple testing, all these other kinds of things, right? The standards for Georgia just happen to be zero sale inside of Georgia, so there's nobody selling inside of Georgia.
Yep.
So technically what that means is that you're allowed to break the law by crossing state lines, collecting medicine and bringing it back into the state, but you wouldn't necessarily be prosecuted if you were caught with it.
Right.
Yeah, and that used to be for, I think, one of 2 conditions. I think it
Yeah.
might have been epilepsy and cancer.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, that's gotten bigger and everything else like that. Different states have different conditions. So, depending on the state you're in, you could and couldn't be, approved for a medical marijuana card based on where you're at. Like the state of California has had anxiety, I think, since the beginning. The state of Nevada just added anxiety like a couple years ago,
Oh, wow.
less than a year ago, I think. Yeah, maybe about a year ago now. So everything changes, right? Autism was added. When different conditions are added and or implemented at the very beginning, there's I can't even remember which state is it, but one of the states is allowing you to get a medical marijuana card regardless of your condition. Like any condition, a doctor can write it for physically anything.
Awesome.
It changes the conversation, right? Like
Yeah.
if you don't have to qualify to use a natural medicine, it makes it just more accessible. Now, does everybody still have accessibility to the plant? No.
Right.
No.
So, in my experience going to a dispensary, the labeling is interesting to me because there's, what's in it, but how, for someone that's coming from a world that doesn't have dispensaries, how do you learn to read the labels?
So I'd like to be able to say that this does really, really good jobs at labeling their products and making sure people understand what they are or what they can do for you. That's not the way that it's gone, right, before.
Yeah.
So, and what I mean by that is that, unfortunately, you're walking into dispensaries and you're asking the kid behind the counter, hey, I would like to feel like this, or I feel like this right now and don't want to, right? Like whichever way they're trying to go to it at. What will work for me? Every single body is physically different. Every single person is physically different. It's right. Like being able to necessarily get something all the time that you're going to enjoy and or it's going to work for you, it can be uncomfortable, especially if you're coming at it from a world of, I don't know what this is, but I want to go check it out.
Right.
And so from there, what is the next thing that has to happen, right? I I'd like to see all states have more terpene information, but guess what? Still, as somebody new who doesn't know what terpenes are, or doesn't know what those things mean, or even how they influence it, or even if you're in a state like here that has terpene information, not everybody uses it. Not everybody knows what one is. I mean, these are still like, okay, this one does this one does this one does that, right? And then it's not that this strain only has one terpene. Most strains have 20 terpenes.
Right.
So and that's the terpene profile, but it also has what's called flavonoids that are rarely tested for these days, as well as your cannabinoids, which are the big pieces, and like the THC, your CBD, CBN, those kind of things, right? So all of those things combined together, and the kid behind the counter is going to tell you this one's going to make you like happy, maybe.
Right.
So I mean, there are apps that are out there that do their best to have basic information. Different dispensaries will display different pieces of information, right? They'll either say, they may say sleepy, or they may give you notes on what it could do for you.
Right.
But it can not. So none of that's regulated. Right? Just because testing is regulated, it doesn't mean information is regulated, right? It means that it's there if you ask for it or if you know about it. And if not, then how do we kind of do that? And so hopefully we can, I can work with people and bridge that gap and figure out a way to help make it a lot simpler. To understand, especially if you're talking about it from a patient condition, right? So the idea of I have a medical problem, I need help with it, and not every or afford just a cannabis treatment, right? So that means integrating it with pharmaceuticals and Western medicine or whatever other medicine that you're using, right? In order to figure out the best ways, the most cost-effective ways to actually get better.
Yeah. So you have lived in Las Vegas now for 5 years? Something like that?
Yeah, about 5 years, yeah.
What's it like to live in Vegas as a normal human being, not working in the tourist zone? What
Yeah.
is it like there?
Yeah, specific because I was medical, and the way that Nevada works, it was you have to be a resident of Nevada, so that was absolutely not a tourist zone. But the industry obviously is very touristy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that there are people that live here. Um, People live here actually make the city run, right? Like there would not be tourism without
Right.
Las Vegans. So but there's a lot of people that come specifically to work as well, right? So, I mean, you're in the circus world and the entertainment world. I mean, these people are coming from all over the world, right? Like they're coming from everywhere to be a part of this, as well as Las Vegas is kind of seen as a pinnacle, right, of many of those industries, right? The entertainment industry in general, besides circus and display and everything else like that, right? Something to keep people occupied.
Yeah.
As evidence to the huge stadium that's getting built, kind of similar
Yeah.
to the one that was just built out there. So, but if you don't know, I've never worked on the strip. There's obviously a lot of people that do work on the strip. I think that definitely has a different kind of energy and feeling, but not working on the strip and living in Vegas, you really don't bother with it too much. Like it's there for the people who come and visit and enjoy it. And you're usually called quite a bit to, partake in people being in town and things like that. James and Rogue came out for their anniversary, and I got to kind of show them around like the local parts, right?
Mhm.
So it's definitely different. The food is freaking amazing.
Really?
There's food. Oh my gosh, it's so good. There's so much, and there's so much of it. There's every kind of buffet you can probably imagine.
Well, yeah.
Well, but I mean, like, so that even goes off the strip. So I'm not even talking about inside of the casinos. I'm talking about like sushi buffets. I'm talking about like crawfish and like seafood buffets and, you know, barbecue, Korean barbecue, right, is huge, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, the Asian American community is really strong here. So there's a little bit of everything kind of scattered in Chinatown. It's one of my favorite places to eat, right? Like I used to live off of Buford Highway. It's kind of
Wait.
like Buford Highway. Yeah, there's a Spring Mountain. There's even a Decatur.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's 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 a pretty big town. I've actually compared it to the way Atlanta looks very much. So there's Las Vegas Strip, which kind of runs parallel to the interstate that goes north and south,
Mhm.
kind of like the 75/85, right? And then there's like kind of a small circle. Then there's inside and outside. And so there's a lot of people in all of those parts, but just tourists right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots to do outside of the typical Las Vegas things. The Grand Canyon's less than a couple hours away.
Yeah.
There's tons of hiking and everything else like that. Mount Charles. So growing up, I grew up in California. I moved to Atlanta, but my whole life, my father talked about Mount Charleston. It's about a half hour north of Vegas, 45 minutes north of Vegas. Goes up to about 10,000 feet, I think, maybe even closer to 16.
Whoa.
That's snowing up there right now. So there's
Wow.
skiing and everything else like that. Yeah. Or it was snowing, I think. But there's lots of trails out there and everything else like that. Lake Mead is around if you kind of want some water. You can adventure to some water. LA is less than like about 3 hours. So
Yeah.
if you really want the ocean, you can go to the ocean too. It's a lot of people enjoy going out and doing things outside. There's lots of art here, really, really beautiful art, and everything. And it's so much more than just the, casinos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really feel like people who aren't familiar with Vegas as anything but a tourist entity would kind of be surprised to know that.
But I mean, so you were just out here for a little bit, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it winds up being like exactly what it was for you. You're busy the entire, like you are booked while you're here. You're
Yep.
completely, especially if you're talking about conferences or something like that. You're completely booked all those days, and then you might be able to see people on occasion, or if you extend your weekend or something else like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people that have that thought, their only experience is that, right? Is the strip or something like that.
Yep.
Because when they're here, they don't get to go anywhere else. So yeah, I'm sure that has some kind of influence on
Yeah.
it.
So what's your favorite place to do or thing to do in Vegas or
Oh my
near
gosh.
Vegas?
Well, more recently, it would probably be the smoking lounges. um, I mean, that's definitely something that, right? Like, so cannabis consumption in general is still very like stigmatized, right?
Yeah.
You can't go walking around on the street smoking a joint necessarily. Do people do it? Yeah, of course.
Yep.
But is it legal? Not necessarily. No, right? The answer is no. Um, So the only way people could really consume would be on private locations, like private property and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So smoking lounges aren't absolutely legal here, right? There's only a couple of a couple of them that are around right now, but more are going to be coming eventually. But it's an interesting idea to think of, like, if you want to start thinking about the Las Vegas Strip and cannabis consumption, right? Because that kind of changes everything. Like, if you can start to consume in mindful ways, right? In this period, right? I'm not even talking about in Nevada or in Las Vegas. I'm just saying period. It changes the way that, right? Like, we've always been hidden away, right? We have to go and do it, here, or we have to stuff a towel under the door, or, it's always, and unfortunately the smell really gives it away, right? So in using it, it's not as, you can't always be quiet about it. That's why they call it loud. um, so I'm excited about things like that. There's a lot, like I said, there are a lot of private events here. So people will host private events where you can consume and things like that. And it just makes it, I don't know, more like it makes you feel more normal. Like at the end of the day, it is medicine, right? So consumption is consumption, but at the end of the day, it is medicine. And to be able to use your medicine freely is empowering.
Right.
Not only is it powerful, but it's empowering. Yeah.
So, where in the world is the most inspiring place that you've ever visited?
Oh, I'll probably always say Catalina Island until Santa Catalina Island off the coast of California.
Oh,
Until
wow.
I go to other magical islands and adventure there. That was just somewhere, it was like an hour speedboat ride off the coast of LA, it was somewhere that would be easily accessible, but it was just like a getaway. And it was, really beach town and everything else like that. And they even have a botanical gardens out there, which is more desert-esque, right? And things like that. But they have horseback riding out there. They have kayaking. You can like kayak to like secluded beaches and like camp out there and stuff like that. It's really just always been this super sweet little simple town. It seems like, right? It's still considered LA County. So it's funny, right? Like it's like, yeah, you're in LA. Well, kind of.
That's cool. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's always been definitely a favorite of mine.
When was the last time you were there?
Oh gosh. Maybe like 10 years ago, kind of after I graduated from college, or I was between maybe positions at CDC once and stuff like that. It's been a long time since I've been there, but it's the place that I say, when I get married, like that's the place I'd like to go. It's beautiful water, right? They have like glass bottom boats, and you can go and you can like see all the fish and lots of deep sea diving and all those other kinds of things out there. So,
God, cool.
And I remember when I was there was like, there's this family going to their boat and everything, and the dogs obviously go with them all the time. So there were like these two little like Shih Tzu doggy, Lhasa Apso doggies, right? Running along the boardwalk, running down, jumping into the boat. And I was just like, see? And everybody rides around on golf carts, right? Because there's not really cars out there. So.
Cool.
Yeah. It's one of those cute places.
Awesome. So how are you doing with all of this social isolation lockdown business?
Well, I like making like my room comfortable and my space comfortable. So I'm typically pretty comfortable at home. So I like, in terms of like being pent up, I'm totally fine with that. Not working right now, so just figuring out, different ways to continue moving forward with the mission, right? also getting paid at the same time.
Yep.
Um, so it's things have been really different, right? I moved downtown at the beginning of the year. So I'm kind of more in like the local area, like
Mm-hmm.
the locals, and obviously the entire city are locals, but
Right.
it's a little bit more, modern in certain senses, but old school. So it's old school Vegas, but like that's where everybody goes to hang out. That's where all the bars and all that other kind of stuff are, all the fun things. The big festivals like Life is Beautiful and all those other places that come out, they go down to downtown Vegas and stuff. So I'm doing okay. A lot of experimental cooking.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, they turn out edible. Are they perfect? Not always, but you work with what you got.
Right.
You realize, oh, well, I'll change that next time, or I'll do this different. And because I mean, with the way that I was working before, I was, I would work at the office and then I would go to events, and so I would be gone for most of the day. So there wasn't a lot of time for cooking. If
Right.
I was cooking, I was cooking for my dogs. At least I cook for myself now.
What's something exciting that you've cooked? Either exciting good or exciting surprising or exciting terrible.
Well, I just made a frittata, and
Yeah.
that turned out great. Like I had some things that were left over, so like I had riced broccoli, and then I put some bacon and onions and all that other kind of stuff, and then just mixed up some eggs and threw it on top, and stuck cast iron pan in the oven for a while, and started to get ready for this, and then came back out and it was done. Great, it worked out perfect. Um, I made some mochi the other day, and so I'm going to tell you this because I feel like people are not warning people about this. And I need to make a statement. You follow the box, the recipe on the box for mochi, you are going to have so much mochi, it's going to be ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
unless you're going to like an event or a party or something, do not make the whole box.
Right.
Make half a box. Like I was just like, forget it. My friend's birthday was Monday, and so or Sunday. She celebrated it on Easter. I was just like, you don't have to worry. Your cake didn't work out. I got mochi for you. And so I was just like, you know how much mochi I gave you? I showed her the container. I was just like, this is how much I have left over. This is ridiculous. But I made it. So I had maca. So I put maca and then
Yeah.
some ginger in it. So it's like a maca ginger mochi, which I would never be able to find anywhere,
Right.
right? Like so yeah, fun stuff.
Excellent. Do you have any rituals that you're really relying on through all this, or that are just part of your life anyway?
Yeah. So I really believe that everything's a vibration, right? We live in the universe is infinite and everything else like that, holographic as well. But with vibration, I really am kind of drawn to like things that I can have and play while I'm doing other stuff, but also get something out of it, right? So I've been heavy into the binaural beats. I've kind of caught on to this new thing called, or not, it's not new, but the concept of light language.
Mhm.
And so, these people are either drawing things or like singing things or bringing in other like universal entities and stuff like that for messages and clearing. And so I've been doing a lot of those kinds of things. I'm doing my best to meditate regularly. I really like using and working with light. So obviously light's another vibration. It's just a spectrum, right? It's not, in terms of things. So using light energies to clear myself, to help keep myself protected and safe. Cord cutting and dissolving is extremely useful, right? Like dissolving from the energy, especially like when you go out sometimes, right? Like depending on what's happening or where you're at, you're absorbing other people's energies, right? Or you're at least engaging with them. And so being sure that I'm releasing those and Like, I'm doing enough. I gotta do what I gotta do. I don't need your stuff too. So yeah, definitely stuff like that.
How did you get started working with light?
Well, so I'm a believer in mind body kind of process. What you think becomes, right? Like it's a vibration, right? You put the vibration out and it'll bring it to you. And so, uh, gosh, I don't even know exactly remember when. I think I learned about it, learning about, light working, right? And being a light worker, and learning about ways to help protect yourself, right? So just putting a bubble of light around you. Name the color of light, depending on what color it is, it's going to give you and help bring you different properties, right? In meditation, you can even, picture yourself inside of the light and breathing in the color and, exhaling it, right? So it's just using that vibration to influence our energies, right? So I've probably been working with it maybe, probably 15, 20 years now. Yeah, those kinds of things. I guess on and off occasionally. I'm doing more tarot. I'm learning tarot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm learning that. I've been really comfortable with oracle cards, so tarot's a little bit different. There's a lot more information on it, so just doing my best to digest all of it. We obviously have friends who make their own card decks and stuff like that. Stephanie has an amazing card deck.
Yes.
And I mean, her readings are just so magical. So I'm sure all of you have had some influence on me.
It's interesting when I'm talking to people, even people who totally don't know each other, there's definitely an arc of these conversations that I've had so far, and tarot keeps coming back. These people from completely different worlds.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a tarot deck, but I think Keith is even doing something. I mean, let's see. There's Keith right there. I know you had him on the other day. Yeah.
And you've got a Keith.
These are some of our
and
other
Monet,
yeah. And this is an artist here. She made this piece. It's so freaking beautiful. I bought the original. I gave it to a friend who helped me move. And so when I saw her on the street, because there's First Friday here, I was just like, I told her the story. I said I gave it away, and so she gave me a print.
Oh, that's awesome.
So now I have her back. She's so pretty.
Yeah.
And so that's Gina Bobina. Yeah. I was talking to her today. She said her mom's making masks, and the fabric she has have little weed leaves and stuff like that on it. It's really cute.
Cute. What is the most memorable advice that you've ever gotten?
There's kind of, I posted something the other day and I thought it was funny, and it said, something about, it's on the aspect of giving you peace for the things that you cannot change, right? Abraham Hicks for the things that you can, and tarot to know the difference. And so Abraham Hicks definitely is coming into my mind, and something that they've said is that if it's not over, it's not done. And if it's done, right? Like, so, and if it's not done, it's not over. So just the idea that we can perceive that things are finished, right? Keith talks about this a lot in his artwork. He'll even take back some of his original paintings, right, from people, and he'll keep working on it, right?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, so it's, it's an aspect of, are things done or are they not? Or can things ever really be done? You're not going to know everything until you cross over, right? Like, and so we can be on a quest to find whatever we choose to, find interest in, right? But we'll never know everything. We'll never be perfect. Those concepts and ideologies are just kind of false, right? It's kind of like the false fear that's going around right now and everything else like that. I mean, it's you're nothing's ever perfect. Failing is okay. And right, coming from like the Asian American background that I have, then the idea of perfectionism, right? Like just in that kind of concept, I think it, it's been something for me to unlearn. And so I really honor the fact that, you know, it'll never be done. It'll never be over. And when it is over, you're done.
Right.
So
Related to that, and in particular that you've come from a background of failure kind of not being an option, what is a time that you've dealt with failure or rejection and it transformed how you went forward in the world?
oh, well, I feel like I'm still dealing with it. Like my family is not, they don't understand cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
They've never really you know, right? To them, they look at it like a lot of people look at it as something that has either hurt people that they know in some way, shape, or form, um, or like perceivingly hurt somebody, right? So it's, they just, they've been very adamant about like, oh, you're, this is the wrong path. You know, if you're going to continue this, you know, we're going to leave you over there and we're going to go over here and everything. And at the end of the day, all I know about this plant and plant teachers is that they are here for us for bigger reasons than we could ever possibly understand.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have the ability to use them in the right ways, and that can be, you know, taken however people can, you know, want to take it. But if it's used in the right ways, magic comes from it. Like it lives the magic that it is. Right? And we become able to embody what it is and the magic that's behind it. And I know where I've been without it, and I know who I am with it. And I will always believe this teacher. Cannabis is a beautiful goddess, specifically. She's the reason I'm here, like that we're talking right now in so many ways. I give a lot of my power to her, just in the sense that she's kept me around. And whatever message I'm supposed to give that's of her, I'm here to share. Because she can do some really good things. And on top of that, we wouldn't have an endocannabinoid system without it. My question then comes like, is it the chicken or the egg? Was
Right.
cannabis here before our endocannabinoid system, or was our endocannabinoid system created out of cannabis?
Mm-hmm.
Or our use and living with it? And either way you look at it, that's magic.
Good. Have you explored other kinds of plant-based medicines and learning more about those, or are you really specializing?
Well, I've obviously I've used them before. In terms of the science and the education behind it, I haven't delved into those necessarily. Listen, cannabis is, it's kind of like tarot. There's a lot of aspects to it that, you know, it you can see the end product, right? Like the physical card or the physical bud or you know,
Right.
whatever it is you're comparing, whatever you want to compare. But then as you look at it and as you pick the card apart and you understand, okay, well, this suit equals this element and these astrological signs play into this part and this and that. It's kind of like the same idea with the medicine, right? Like there's so many intricate parts that who knows if we'll ever learn about all pieces of all plants, right? Because we're coming at it from kind of from the back of the race, right? Because it's been prohibited for all this time.
Right.
And a lot of the things that were here, that were history, have been destroyed in the process, even of it, right? So we're having to relearn everything. I honor what they have to share. I'm still learning. I mean, there's so many different pieces of it too, though, right? It goes so if you want to talk about some of the other things that have been more recently decriminalized, like mushrooms or something else like that, it's just like cannabis. There's hundreds of strains, right?
Yep.
Different types, everyone's going to give you a different emotion, a different feeling, a different experience. And then however much you have will give you different things and different treatments, right? I'm very interested in looking to see how MAPS continues this conversation, right? The Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. I've definitely applied for some positions there. That would be like you want to talk about a dream job in my mind. Like, that sounds fascinating to kind of bridge those worlds and everything else like that. But there's so much to learn about all of it. I'm really comfortable, especially like even in this cannabis game, you start to realize that like there's different people that do different things really, really well. I don't need to do and so in coming from where I used to come from, where I used to think I had to do all pieces of everything, right, in order to complete my job or be useful or anything else like that, I'm starting to sit back and be like, well, I can do these things. I know those people can do those things. Let's just bring all of us together and see what we can create. Because I'm not here to grow the cannabis. I'll help you understand how to use it. Can I grow it? I will learn. But it's ever changing. And so the people who are experts in it, I'm happy to let them be experts in it, and I'll learn from them.
Do you feel that culturally the cannabis business is just run differently because of the nature of its own nature, and that does it fall into sort of those corporate traditional business traps? Yeah.
So yes, and especially as it gets bigger and bigger, it will continue to start looking more like that, more and more like that. At the end of the day, cannabis is not the cannabis industry that is what people see, basically, like in terms of like the front-facing dispensaries and everything else like that. That is purely retail.
Yeah.
It's not medicine. It's not anything else. It is retail at the end of the day. So again, going into the dispensary and asking the kid behind the counter, do you think he's really going to give you what you want, or is he going to push what your manager's asked you to push for the day?
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's meeting quota and everything else like that. I mean, some of these dispensaries are, especially with what's going on now, there's a lot of people getting laid off. It's, when big companies come down from Canada and start to buy up companies and stuff like that, right? Because they've been in the game and, they're the billionaires and everything else like that. They'll come down here, they'll buy the companies, and then it becomes even more corporate, right? Because they already have had their structure laid out.
Right. Yeah.
So people who have started in the industry with one place, kind of get left behind and are pushed out. People think they can do it all on their own in a lot of senses. They leverage what people do for them, whether or not they're paying them for it, right? Kind of a thing. So it can, I think it can get even stickier because you're also working in this, like it's almost entertainment, right? Because there's an aspect of entertainment similar to alcohol, but maybe not exactly, right? It may be even more entertainment based than alcohol would be considered, if that's possible.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely retail. Definitely prone to, issues and concerns. But it also has happened very quickly, right? So, people kind of just have to make sure that there's another plank in front of them so that they don't fall down. You know what I mean? Like if you're building the bridge as you're walking on it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah.
Is this what you thought you were gonna do when you grew up? I mean, who would have thought that was even an option?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you and I are definitely of the dare era. Yes. I was taught very early on that those are no-nos and not good things. Cannabis I didn't even use until I was in college. So it's not like I was sneaking around in high school trying to do things. I think I had one drink in high school even. So, I was busy doing other things at that time. I was playing sports and stuff like that. For me, it wasn't a part of what I did. So it was never an option. Of course, this industry wasn't even here before, right? It was completely illegal.
Yeah.
And it's even more unique and different in terms of the industry if you want to talk about the brand new hemp industry, right? Because the cannabis industry has been around for, in some states, 20 years.
Yeah.
This hemp industry is brand new almost. I mean, it's not, but it is because the Farm Bill passed in 2018. So, I mean, it's been about a year and a half now. It's unique. It's a unique atmosphere. And there's many pieces of the plant that are fully legal, right? The only thing that's regulated is THC, the molecule THC. So the plant is technically not regulated, the THC is. And so that's when you're talking about like non-THC products, I mean, the game is wide open, kind of. It's very saturated.
Yeah.
But there's new ways to use it every single day. People are figuring out different compounds to focus on. I don't even think CBD is going to be the biggest name in the cannabis world. Maybe next year. New compounds are coming about every single day. We're learning about new things. Testing equipment is becoming more and more sensitive. Standards are becoming more and more reliable. We're going to continue to learn new and things. And so this industry is not going to look like what it is now in 10 years, but it's definitely not going to look like now probably by the end of the year, especially with, with the new political atmosphere and, the presidency coming back up and everything else like that. You don't know what it's going to look like. And once this becomes federally legal, it's a brand new world.
Yeah. Well, we are almost at our time. Do you have a mentor?
Yes and no. I don't have a person that I run everything by and do everything with. Probably would be and could be useful to me. But I do have a lot of people that are very inspirational to me, yourself included, right? There's a lot of magic in our immediate circle. Like I said, I don't claim to be the expert on anything. I'm not here to be the expert on anything. I would rather go to people who I think know more than me,
Mhm.
especially on topics that I don't know much about. So I love using other people's talents and tricks and things like that. YouTube, I think, makes it a little bit easier to do things without mentors now, right? Like you can
Yeah.
practice on your own, right? Because a lot of the techniques that we're probably using right now are things that had to be taught by somebody,
Mhm.
like to you, from somebody to you, and everything else like that. So, um, no, but it'd probably be smart.
All right.
Yeah, because I have a lot of ideas, and like I go to people to help me get them done,
Yeah.
obviously. But to have somebody making sure all of those things, keep moving along would be nice. Can I just have like a personal manager or something like
Yeah, totally.
that? Yeah.
All right. So last question. Um, what is the most memorable meal you've ever eaten?
Oh goodness. It'd probably have to be a lot of the ones I grew up eating. Like my mom would throw these parties, right? And she had like a door that she turned into a table, right?
Oh, yeah.
So a door-sized table, and she would just fill that entire table just with all sorts of food. And so like my grandmother would make certain things. She would make like her sushi rice. There were always like staples. So I mean, going back to like those times when it was just like this huge spread of food and everything else like that. This is, of course, when I was a kid and I didn't know what sashimi was, and I wasn't eating the amazingly fresh sashimi from LA like an idiot. Kind of frustrated with myself, like, God damn. But I mean, palettes have to
Yeah.
evolve and stuff like that